You are listening to the Small Biz Chat Podcast, Episode 5. Today we're talking with local search expert Mike Bayuk, and he's going to tell us everything we need to know about how local businesses can be found by even more new customers online. So let's get started. Hey everybody, Ariel Hurst here. Welcome to the Small Biz Chat Podcast, sponsored by Pure Chat. If this is your first time listening, then thanks so much for coming. The Small Biz Chat Podcast is produced every other week for small business owners just like you who are looking to continually improve their businesses. Today we're talking with local marketing expert Mike Bayuk. He spent the last 4 years optimizing digital marketing for car dealerships, and through his research he's found that one of the best ways for local businesses to improve their web presence is to leverage Google My Business. Now, don't worry if you've never heard of Google My Business before. We're going to tell you everything you need to know and give you a full rundown on what that is and how it can improve your web presence. So, let's dive into my interview with Mike Bayuk. From a local business's perspective, what is a Google My Business account? And then, do local businesses already have one? Because after all, many local businesses show up in Google without doing anything.
Yeah, so Google My Business is the latest version of Google's attempt to integrate Google Plus with all of their other services. So it used to be called Google Places. Before that, it was called Google Plus Local. So thinking about it as Google Plus Local can make it a little bit easier to kind of conceptualize what it's for. Because a few years ago, Google was going through this phase where they were trying to make Google Plus integrated with everything. If you've tried to make a YouTube channel recently, you might see that you have to have a Google Plus page associated with that YouTube channel. So this Google My Business product, this Google My Business account that you're going to have is basically the current iteration of that idea. Google Plus integrating with all of these other Google properties, and specifically and especially for local businesses, integrating with Google Maps. So what is a Google My Business account? It's you being able to log in and say, this is my business information, this is my phone number, my address, the name of my business, and I'm going to put this out here as the official record. It's on Google Maps, and my profile, my listing, is going to have a nice little check mark on it that shows that it is me, the business owner, who has gone through and verified this. That's what your Google My Business account is for.
That's awesome. And what's the benefit of setting this up? I mean, like I said, you do many local businesses already show up in Google without doing anything. So what does this add?
Yeah, so you're right. A lot of businesses will show up in a Google search without business owners having to do anything. So yeah, I kind of a question of, what's the benefit here? So I think that it's useful to give a little bit of background information about this so that people know or think about it in terms of how Google might think about this product. So Google's a search engine. And the whole goal of a search engine is to be able to deliver information to people when they're looking for it. So if Google is trying to serve up the best information that they possibly can, then they're not always going to be able to rely on business owners to be able to supply that information for them. So, with Google Maps, they're pulling this data, they're pulling this information from a lot of different sources and from some places that maybe people wouldn't even think of. So they're pulling it from, your website, for one. They're pulling it from other online listings and directory sites, things like yellowpages.com or 411.com, or there's a million of these sites out there that are directories for local information, and they might be pulling from government records, or the one that I like to give it as an example that I think a lot of people might not know is that Google has programs that can analyze the images that they capture on Google Street View. So for those who don't know, Google Street View, if you're on Google Maps, you can click and drag the little guy to look at, whatever piece of the street you want to look at, because Google drives down those roads with panoramic cameras, and those cameras can actually analyze the numbers that appear physically on the buildings that they're standing as they're taking pictures of. So then, all right, if Google's pulling all this information, then what good does it do me to go in and claim my Google My Business listing as well? Really, it's that you want to make sure that, one, they get it right, because Google might be pulling that information from a lot of different sources, but all those different sources don't always get it right either. So I see that it's pretty common that you'll find, one of the examples I gave was directory sites. Well, these directory sites aren't always the best about updating their own data or their own information. They might have, an old address for your business where you used to be located, or maybe they don't even have your business on there at all. Maybe they've got another business that used to be at your location. So just because Google's pulling all of this information doesn't necessarily mean that they've got it right. It's like if you have mixed information out there, you could be getting mixed results in search. The other thing about it is making sure that it's your own. Google does give you the opportunity to put in a custom description of your business. You can upload photos of your business. You can post things the way that you would to any social media channel, Facebook, Twitter, or what have you. And you can also respond to the reviews that you get. So if you do a Google search for a local business, that might be one of the first things that you actually notice, is it'll show you the star rating that you have based on the reviews that you've gotten from users. And so that's a pretty key piece of functionality. You want to make sure that if people are going to be able to go online and say whatever they want about your business, you want to put yourself in a position where you can actually respond to them and manage some of that feedback.
Yeah, definitely. I definitely appreciate what you're saying, just because I know I've clicked on places in Google Maps and been scrolling through the pictures and seen a few that are totally random, like how did they get here? So being able to control that is really important. I definitely see where you're coming from.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, the other thing to know is that, Google is trying to, like I said, they want to serve up the best information that they can to people as efficiently as possible. So they are going to have what's called the knowledge graph now in a lot of search results. It's just a little box on the side. Might give a quick rundown of some of your basic business information. That's where people's eyes are going to gravitate to on a search results page. And you do have, you can't influence it directly, but you do have some indirect influence when you set up your Google My Business account in terms of making sure that it's got the photo that you want, making sure your hours are correct, basic things like that. So yeah, you definitely want to make sure you're putting your best foot forward.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I don't think I even hardly go to many websites anymore just because I rely on that so much. So you're right that needs to be accurate. So my next question is, so as you're going about setting up your Google business page, is there any specific things you should be doing as you go through that process? Is there any consistencies that there need to be, things of that nature?
Yeah, good question. So consistency, it's good that you actually mentioned that word, because that is kind of one of the, kind of a key tenet of marketing in general, branding. You want to make sure that your branding and your marketing is consistent. And so that's definitely true with how you make yourself appear online as well. You don't want to do something like, and I see this all the time, where people will say on their website that they have a location at an address in X city, but then on their social media profiles, they might say that they have a location in Y city. You want to make sure that you're not putting mixed information out there, because, like I said in the answer to your first question, if you've got mixed information out there, then basically that's going to decrease Google's confidence in the information that they're serving up. So that could potentially have some sort of negative impact on your ranking in search. I know, so at this point, I have a lot of experience working with car dealerships. Mm-hmm. I know car dealerships and other local businesses like to use tracking numbers a lot. That's something that you're going to have to kind of weigh the pros and cons of in terms of whether it's worth taking kind of that hit in consistency in order to get yourself that data about where your calls might be coming from. So me personally, I think it's simplest to just say you stick with one phone number, and if you really want to know where people are calling you from, you can always ask them. You can always tell your staff, hey, you might want to just think about asking, hey, where did you hear about us today? That can give you some of the information that you might be looking for without necessarily going for a tracking number. Not that I'm totally discouraging people from tracking numbers. Obviously, they have a lot of uses for them. But just it's something that you want to keep in mind. If you are choosing to go with tracking numbers, you got to know that Google may send out an automated update because that tracking number doesn't match what you have listed anywhere else, and maybe it'll change the phone number that appears as the default in search for you. So when you set up that Google My Business account, you're you are an important data point for Google, but you're still just one data point. They are still
Right.
pulling from all these different places. So yeah, consistency, like you said, is definitely a point to consider.
That's awesome. And can Google distinguish between the different types of businesses? So, for example, a plumber is a different type of business than a bakery. Should they be going about this process in a different way, or is it basically the same thing?
Yeah, so to answer your question, it is basically the same thing, but it is a distinction that you need to be aware of. So if you're going into Google Plus, you want to create a Google My Business page. The terminology gets confusing because they call it different things all the time, but you will be setting up this page at plus.google.com. That's where you're going to go and sign in and do all your work. So when you want to get this page, you go to your pages menu and the button actually says get your page. Then it will give you a couple of options, and so you do need to be aware of that in terms of what kind of business you are and choosing the right one. So the three different options that they have right now for pages are: you can be a storefront page, a service area page, or a brand page. So like you say, a plumber might be different than a bakery because a bakery will probably, most likely, there may be some degree of crossover between them, but a bakery probably is going to be a storefront. Storefront is what it sounds like. You have a physical storefront. Customers are coming to you in order to get your services or buy your goods, right? Contrast that with, like you said, for your example, a plumber. A plumber might not be somebody that it has customers coming to them. Instead, you might get a call, and then you're headed out to where the customers are. So that would be the service area type page. So again, I do see people make this mistake quite commonly because they might start signing up for for a storefront page, and then it'll ask, do you deliver to any locations? And so people say, yeah, I deliver. So of course I'm going to mark that I deliver to every city surrounding me. It seems like it might be a good idea to you because you want to show, oh, I'm available to all these different places. But if you're a storefront business, if primarily you have customers coming to you, then you'll want to probably go with that storefront page. If you primarily go to your customers, you'll probably go with that service delivery page. And then the third option for you is the brand page. So this might be something that local business owners could consider in addition to maybe your storefront or your service area page. Brand pages, again, it's for what it sounds like for a brand. So I think that the example that I gave earlier was a brand like Chipotle might have a brand page for Chipotle as the brand. It's not specifically tied to one geographic location, but they still have listings on Google Maps for each of their individual stores. So if you have a business where you feel like, hey, maybe we're going to be looking to expand to more than one location, you'll still probably want to have your storefront page for your main location, but you may consider also having a brand page that represents you as an organization, as a brand that people can interact with differently than they might a geographic location.
Okay, so my next question is, now that we have this page set up, what should you be doing to keep it up? Or do you need to be keeping it up? Because I know, for example, for us at Pure Chat, we use Buffer, and they always have promote your post to Google+, and I sometimes I say, okay, other times I'm like, forget about it. What good is that going to do anyway? What's your take on that?
Yeah, so the simplest answer to your question is yes, you do need to maintain it. As far as the actual posting is concerned, it's good to know that Google has been backing away from it a little bit. They're not necessarily backing away from this idea of having all of their services integrated into one. You can still see that that's kind of a way that they want to make things work. They want to put all of their products into one location, make it as easy to interact with as they can. But I think that it's fair to say that Google Plus as a social media network has just not taken off the same way that some of their competitors might have.
Maybe not.
Maybe not. The thing that you do need to be aware of, though, is that when you are setting up this Google My Business account, the way that you get started is by verifying your listing or claiming your listing. So Google does this by having you go in, you sign up, you say, all right, I'm going to be the owner of X business. You put in all your information, and then they make you verify by either sending a postcard to your place of business. They send that to your physical address, or maybe they have the phone option available for you. So they'll call on your business line. They'll have a robocall that will read off a PIN number, and then you enter that in. So the whole idea of this is they have some sort of security check in place to make sure that, okay, if I'm going on to say I'm the owner of this business, they're verifying that you are actually the owner of that business. So how does that relate to your question about maintaining this, keeping your accounts up, so to speak? What they'll actually do, and they just announced this relatively recently, is Google is going to start, at least they claim, but I feel like I should give fair warning to everybody. They say that they're going to be actually unverifying or declaiming those listings if you don't interact with them for an extended period of time. And the fun thing about Google, they don't tell you how long that time period is, right? So this could be 2 months, it could be 6 months. Either way, play it safe. You don't want to get your account unverified and then you have to go through that again. So make sure that you are logging into it regularly. That's going to be just the bare minimum if you want to maintain your verification.
That's good to know. And the next thing I'm wondering is, do you have any other tips for getting the most out of your Google My Business page? Are there any other tips and tricks?
Tips and tricks. So I will just say that it does, when you're setting it up, also give you a progress bar at the top. It'll tell you the percent completed that your profile or your page is. So maybe you go on and you get yourself verified, but you don't necessarily have an offer on the page, or you don't have photos uploaded, or you didn't put in a description, or maybe you haven't responded to reviews. I would just say make sure that that progress bar is all the way filled up. You don't want to leave anything just sitting there thinking, oh, I'll get to it later. Definitely make sure to publish all the information on there that you can. And I said responding to reviews. Responding to reviews won't show up on that progress bar actually, but it is worth noting that is, and I addressed this in one of the earlier questions as well, but it's worth reiterating that responding to those reviews is important. I mean, it seems like one of those basic tips that you might get from anywhere, but it keeps being repeated for a reason. You don't want to have people going online and saying, they can say pretty much anything. It's worth noting that, Google doesn't remove reviews for alleged defamation. So really, unless you have a court order, people can say almost whatever they want about you. You got to make sure that you're putting yourself in a position where if someone says something negative about you, or maybe something untruthful even, you want to show that you're, not just that you're responding, but that you're responding and framing yourself as the good guy in this.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know we've been really focused on Google My Business because, of course, Google is the #1 way that local businesses get found. But are there any other simple tools that some local businesses can use to improve their SEO or just get discovered even more easily?
I would say that, keeping in this sort of vein, it's worth noting just that there's a number of different sites that work essentially the same way as Google My Business in terms of having a listing that's out there for you that might be automatically generated, but that you do have the opportunity to go and claim yourself. So that works on Bing, it works on Yahoo Local, it works on Yelp, Foursquare. There's a bunch of sites like this that operate on the same system of claiming your listing and then giving you various tools in terms of how you can manage those. A lot of those offer paid alternatives as well, if that's something that you wanted to consider. But most of them do also include that free option for you. And so I definitely think that it could be worth your time to spend claiming, Yelp, Bing, Yahoo, maybe your Foursquare listing, and a few others.
Awesome, that's great. And my last question is just maybe involving this topic or on a totally different topic. What's the #1 piece of advice you would have for small businesses?
The #1 piece of advice that I would have for small businesses, I would say that you just want to think about putting your best foot forward. I said that earlier, and what I mean by that is just making sure that the information that you're putting out there is consistent, and that that you're making yourself look good. So like I said, with responding to reviews, I mean, a lot of people will kind of get discouraged by seeing online review sites like this and just think, oh, well, if anybody can just go and post anything, then what's even the point? Why should I even bother managing this stuff? I would say that it is worth your time to make sure that what people are saying about you does get a response, and making sure that your business information is correct.
Once again, that was Mike Bayuk, local search expert. If you'd like to learn more about how to improve your local business's web presence, feel free to check out the links below or our blog at blog.purechat.com. Once again, we'd like to say thank you to you, our listener, for joining us today, and to our sponsor, PureChat. If you have any questions about the content on the show, feel free to tweet us at PureChat or at Ariel Hurst. And as always, don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe to the Small Biz Chat podcast on iTunes or your favorite RSS reader. We look forward to seeing you again in the next couple weeks on the Small Biz Chat podcast.